What's going on, everybody? Welcome to the Always Hope podcast, a production of Willwood's Faith in Marriage. This is Dr. Mario Sacasa, and I pray that you're having an amazing day today. Well, joining me on the show today is Debbie Capen, Executive Director of MiraVia, to talk about the effective ways of spreading the pro-life message through local outreach and service. In today's episode, Debbie describes the services of MiraVia, which include a community outreach center and a residency home for pregnant college women. We also talk about the ways to best serve women who are facing an unplanned pregnancy, what the pro-life movement needs to do to change the narrative on abortion, and how the overturning of Roe v. Wade has impacted her work. Debbie also beautifully shares her story of having an abortion when she was in college and what the process was like many years later when she decided to go public with her story. If you find this episode helpful, please share with one person who you think would benefit from it, or please consider leaving a rating or writing a review on Apple Podcasts or Spotify, or sharing it on social media. Well, let's get into this conversation with Debbie Capen. Debbie Capen, welcome to the Always Hope podcast. How are you doing today?
Very well. Thank you so much for having me.
I'm grateful to have you. We're finally have some spring weather again in North Carolina. We had a little blast there where it was freezing again for another. I was like, what the heck, man? I thought we were done with this. So
it's beautiful. If my allergies are going to act up, I should at least get the benefit of the warm weather.
Yeah, that's exactly right. If pollen's going to be in the air, at least let it be warm and not be pollen and cold. Because now it's allergies and a cold, and now we're sniffling season for all sorts of reasons. Yeah, that's absolutely right. I made the mistake of actually washing my car the week before the pollen started coming out. And I was like, why did I waste my time? Like, I was like, it's just, anyways. That has nothing to do with our conversation. E for effort. That's right. Thank you, Debbie. I appreciate that. It makes me feel better. Well, thank you so much for coming on the podcast. And I look forward to our conversation. So just introduce yourself to the audience. You're the executive director of MiraVia. Just tell us a little bit about what MiraVia is. And I'm sure being executive director means you wear a lot of hats. And so just kind of what are some of those hats and just how has it been for you being the executive director of MiraVia?
Yeah, so MiraVia has been around since 1994. It started out under the name of Room at the Inn. It was started by a small group of local Catholics in the Charlotte area who saw the need for a maternity home. So they came together, they created the 501c3, they built a home in Charlotte that could house up to 6 women. And that was going along. And I actually started attending the banquet as just a supporter in 2001.
Okay.
And I walked into this ballroom and saw, 1,000 pro-life people, and I was just blown away. And I was like, I want to be a part of this organization any way that I can. So supported it. And then in 2004, the organization announced that they were going to add a new direction to the organization. And they announced that they were going to build a facility at the campus of Belmont Abbey College and house pregnant college students.
Wow.
And sitting at my table, just eating dinner with my friends, I literally wanted to jump out of my seat up and scream, someone finally gets it, because I had had an abortion before I came back to my faith when I was in college. And I was so touched that this organization realized that there was a need. And so I called the executive director at the time and told her my story and said, how can I help? What can I do? And funny enough, I got a call about 10 months after that from her saying, hey, would you tell your story in our banquet video?
Wow.
So I went from very anonymous, I had been active in pro-life locally at that point, but nobody really knew my story. So I went from no one really knowing my story to every person I knew in Charlotte hearing my story in the ballroom that night.
Wow.
And but it was such a blessing to really to kind of put myself out there, because God used it just like the woman at the well, I kind of think. And So from there, I became more active in the organization and came on in 2008 as the assistant director. And yes, I mean, wore a lot of hats in that role and really got to know the organization, was there to see them, knock down the first trees at the property to build the facility, was there through the capital campaign to build it and open it and do the ribbon cutting and to see the first residents move in. So we have the facility here at Belmont Abbey College for pregnant college students where our moms can go to any school, not just Belmont Abbey. In fact, our moms have come so far from 9 different states and
Wow.
12 different colleges.
Wow.
And we transitioned the original maternity home into an outreach center
Okay.
that serves women with economic needs. And they come to that program and receive, just about everything a mom could need, from diapers to, clothing to cribs, car seat strollers, and go to a support group.
Hmm.
And so really the organization has these 2 beautiful ministries, one that's in the community serving your neighbors, and one that's on a college campus that's serving that very unique role for what a woman needs if she becomes unexpectedly pregnant in college.
Incredible. Thanks, Debbie, for sharing that. It's really beautiful. So let's talk about MiraVia for a second, and certainly want to get back to hearing your story and more about that. This outreach center, you said this starts back in 1994, called Room at the Inn. Just to ask, this is an aside, is it connected? I mean, at the parish we're at of St. Mark's, they do a homeless ministry, and it has the same name, Room at the Inn. Is that just coincidental, or was that connected?
Well, that's exactly why we changed our name, is because there are so many organizations, both locally and nationwide, that use
Mm-hmm.
a name, either Room at the Inn, Room in the Inn.
Mm-hmm.
And so when we built the facility at Belmont Abbey College, we realized this was the perfect opportunity to
Yeah, to
rebrand.
rebrand. Yeah.
And God sent an amazing person, Clayton Tolley, who owns a company called Brand Symbol,
Mm.
and they donated their services to help us go through that really unique process of rebranding. And it came to MiraVia, which is unique and is meant to mean the miraculous way, or miraculous way. And it gives us a wonderful opportunity to really go into the secular world as well with
Mm-hmm.
a name like MiraVia. Whereas the name Room at the Inn, it's very clear all of a sudden that, we're a Catholic organization, or at least a
Mm-hmm.
faith-based organization. And sometimes that would stop the conversation before it even started, because
Mm-hmm.
people had assumptions about what a religious organization does.
Mm-hmm.
And so this wonderful name that we have landed on kind of helped us to set ourselves apart, and, like I said, be able to start conversations that might not have happened otherwise.
I love it. I love it. And so being able to, branding's important, and
Mm-hmm.
rebranding is significant when an organization goes through it. And I think it's beautiful because it can help bring a new direction. And as you stated, it also opened up new opportunities. And so the services that you provide, those two arms, the maternity home specifically for college aged women, but then also
Mm-hmm.
the outreach center for women in need of any of those services. I don't know, how many diapers do you guys give out a year? I mean, it's like
Around 50,000
50,000.
diapers a
That's a
year.
lot of diapers. Yeah,
That's a lot of diapers.
that's a lot of diapers. And so being able to just give those type of needs, provide those type of services to help those needs, I think is important. And so you just stated that, which is great. And that's one thing I wanted to know is I mean, I can't imagine somebody on either side of the aisle, political aisle, having a hard time with a maternity home for women on a college campus. Like, I can't imagine somebody saying, no, that shouldn't happen. Like, whether you're pro-abortion or pro-choice or pro-life or against abortion, like, so even changing the name to something a little less religious in context, does that open up pathways for conversation? I mean, how does that, or support, I should say, not even conversation, but support from kind of both sides?
Yeah, absolutely. We are, in fact, a Catholic organization,
Mm-hmm.
so we don't hide that, but I feel like it does open doors if we don't lead with that. When
Mm-hmm.
you are trying to approach a college at their health center, or, whomever the contact is, especially at secular colleges, they might already have some ideas in mind that build barriers. And I can tell you, our very first client ran into that. She was coming from UNC Charlotte. And when her friends found out that she was considering coming to us, they said, "Oh, those Catholics, they just want to take your baby."
Hmm.
And I mean, I actually laughed when she told me that because it was so ridiculous. But evidently, there's still, some really kind of crazy ideas out there about us. And I have to share one other
Yeah, please.
funny story.
I
So
love stories.
when we did our groundbreaking, we sent out some press releases, and believe it or not, it was even picked up by the Huffington Post, and they ran an article about it. And I made the mistake of reading the comments. Like, that's always a scary thing to read the
Uh-huh.
comments
Yeah,
under an
yeah, yeah,
article.
yeah.
But just like you said, people shouldn't have any problem with it. And one comment was under it was like, "Man, I can't stand Catholics, but at least they're putting their money where their mouth is."
Well, that's it. I mean, yeah.
so so yeah, truly, if people are pro-choice, as they
Yes.
label
As they
themselves,
label
this is
themselves, yeah.
this is a choice,
This is it.
and it's an
Exactly.
empowering choice for these young women. Yeah.
Was the Huffington Post article favorable?
It was. They just really kind of restated what was in our press release. It was short and sweet, but it got out there, and
Hmm.
we were amazed. And to this day, when people find out what we do, it's, yes, we're pro-life, but there's really nothing they can pick on.
Right, right, right. We're providing homes for women who are pregnant to finish college and to take care of them for 2 years after the baby's born. Like,
Yes.
what about this is
Yep.
is wrong? Like, this is, and I think that mission is beautiful, and I think that's truthfully, I think I'm grateful that that comment was stated, because it does kind of help say, like, yeah, we are putting our money where our mouth is. I mean, if we proclaim to be pro-life, then that means we have to take care of women and in circumstances where they are in a crisis pregnancy or an unplanned circumstance, in particular if they're a college student, and being able to help them finish their degree and providing for those very base material resources and needs that people have. And I think that's what I didn't know that this is what MiraVia did. Tom, a mutual friend of ours, Tom McAllister, who's the reason we're speaking today, is invited me to that same banquet this past fall. And I equally, just like you back in 2001, this past fall, I was equally blown away. I was like, there had to be 1,500 people in the room. Is that right? Somewhere in
Yes.
that
Yep.
ballpark? Yeah.
1,500.
Yeah.
Yep. Mhm.
I'm getting better about like size of rooms and how many people are there. So I figured, that's a lot of people. And then learning about the ministry also and the work that you guys do, it's not just, and I'm not saying this in any way, I'm not saying just a standard kind of pro-life clinic. I mean, because pro-life clinics are doing wonderful work, and I have great friendships with the people who run the clinics in the Women's in Life Clinic in New Orleans. And they provide great services of ultrasounds. They have some medical resources that they provide as well, which is great. Everything a woman needs except for the abortion, pretty much is what they offer. But your mission sounds different in that you actually provide homes for people and a space for them to be able to live. And so, I mean, I know that may predate you in terms of the mission, but why focus on that, and why provide that particular source and pivot there? And then even more specifically, when you shifted to providing specifically with college students as opposed to just the general population, why even more so have that particular focus and niche?
Yeah, pregnancy resource centers are absolutely essential. And abortion is usually fear-based.
Hmm.
Women are driven to abortion because of the fears that they're facing, the obstacles that they see, whether they're real or perceived. And if we can just meet them and talk to them and find out what those drivers are, and just remove those obstacles, then it's no longer a crisis.
Hmm.
And so sometimes it's just as simple as, I don't know, where I'm living right now. I've got roommates. How am I going to live with a baby? Or I'm afraid to tell my family, and if we can help walk them through those types of issues. And so really, for every woman, we try to find, what those pressure points are. And I always like to say that what we do is not rocket science. It is just simply
Right.
helping with
Right.
the things that they need, which
Yes.
anybody can do. And and so yeah, we have discovered this unique population of college students that no one was paying attention to. And I have to give so much credit to Abbot Placid Solari, who is the abbot of Belmont Abbey College. And he's the one who said to the board of the organization at the time that if they ever wanted to serve college students, that they would donate the land.
Mm.
And in that beautiful Benedictine tradition of hospitality, they donated the land and we built the facility and operate the facility. And it's this beautiful partnership of them welcoming us in and providing that sacred space, that unique space for women who didn't think they had anywhere to go.
Yeah, I mean, I think I heard you say that in a different interview that if we can remove the drivers and if we can attend to the needs, then it is no longer a crisis pregnancy. And it's just beautiful. I mean, you're absolutely right. The only reason it's a crisis is, I mean, it's not the only, but the reason is because there's a lot of fear, a lot of needs, a lot of concerns that are all that are, like you said, real perceived, often very real concerns about financial questions, about family, about support, because pregnancy is, I mean, we're not, we're not seahorses. We're like halfway through, we can like donate our eggs, to the man. And it's like, all right, buddy, you take care of the rest, like that's not the way it works for us. And so it's not equality there. It's just, it's the women, it's all on her, And so if she doesn't have, that network or a spouse or a family to provide, then certainly I can understand where that feeling of vulnerability emerges. And it's not just a feeling, it's very real. And so I think it's very beautiful that you guys offer what you do to be able to help women who find themselves in these circumstances of a pregnancy that they weren't quite ready for and don't quite have the material needs of being able to provide for that. So how do you market this? I mean, you said that, how do you make sure that women who are college women who need the services know about the services? Because I imagine that's a challenge in and of itself. And so how do you market it? And then how do you even make decisions about bringing people on if your house is full? I mean, what other do you provide? I mean, I just can imagine some of those have to be challenges too, because there's only so much space and I'm sure the need can outweigh it at times. So I don't know. I'm just curious about some of those questions as well.
Yeah, marketing is a huge challenge for us in so many ways. I mean, number one, um, you talk about seahorse, I'm going to talk about unicorns. We're kind of a unicorn. Like nobody, no, nobody thinks that there's a place like this out there.
Right.
And so we have that uphill battle of not only explaining that, yes, we're here and here's what we do.
Mm-hmm.
Then there's the other challenge of, there's only a few weeks window to reach a young woman when,
Right.
if she's
Right.
feeling that crisis. So we as a nonprofit, before we didn't really have much of a budget for marketing, and it was a lot of word of mouth. It was a lot of us just going out there and handing out our brochures and meeting with the colleges. This year, we're actually going to start doing more digital marketing. We're super excited about that, and
Mm-hmm.
and just the opportunity to do podcasts like with you today to
Yeah.
get the word out, because the majority of our moms do find us through referrals of family and friends.
Mm-hmm.
So it's someone finding out that their daughter or their niece or their friend is pregnant, and they think, oh gosh, I remember hearing about this place that would be perfect for you, and a quick Google search and they find us.
Mm-hmm.
So really it is, if it's not the woman directly, it's marketing to those people that they will confide in.
Mm-hmm.
And that's our constant challenge is trying to keep top of mind that we're here, we're ready to serve. Right now we don't have a waiting list, we have vacancies. So
Wow.
you just never know who might hear us. And I'm always asking people to follow us on social media.
Yeah.
We've had women find us through that before as well. So if you share a post, you never know, it might be at just the right moment that somebody needed to see it.
Absolutely. And again, there's no cost to the women.
Nope, no cost to the women. We're a 501c3, so that
Unbelievable.
banquet that we mentioned, that's a huge part of it, raising the funds. And yeah, so that's the other thing is that they come here, they can stay 2+ years,
Mm.
and in that time we're helping them to not only finish school or further their education, but find part-time jobs, saving up, making a plan for independence and housing. It really is a program. It's not just free room and board. They're meeting weekly with a case manager, where they're setting goals together on what life is going to look like beyond MiraVia.
Yeah.
And when they leave here, they've got that plan in place, and they've got the support of the friends that they've made. That the relationships that are built here really do go on. I went to one of our former clients' weddings a few weeks ago,
Oh
and there
my,
were
that's awesome.
4 or 5 of our former clients there, and 2 of the babies were in the wedding. It was just
Oh
really
my
edifying
gosh.
to see
It's
it. Yeah, it's
incredible.
like, this is what it's all about.
Yes, yes. All I keep thinking about is, have you ever seen the movie Bedtime Stories? Adam Sandler's Bedtime Stories.
Oh yeah, yeah.
So he has that one kind of dream where he's like wants the red Ferrari, and he's like, for free. He keeps talking to his kids. He's like, for free, and so it just Rob Schneider's voice is in my head right now, thinking about all this. And is it for free? Really? It's this. It is. Sorry, my brain always
Yeah.
goes to movies, so my apologies.
No, I'm right there with you. Yeah, yes, it's free, but
But the
these
program
young women
element.
work hard, and
Yes,
it's
yes,
it's
yes.
it's it's certainly not an easy journey. But when you have the support of other people around you, it makes the burden much lighter.
Yeah, and what I love what you're saying is that again, you're providing these resources, but you also have a program, and that the women, they have case managers. They have to have a plan of action. There is a time limit in terms of how long they can stay, and so helping them navigate college courses, navigate those first couple of years, that they feel supported with that and avail themselves to those resources. And then when it's time to transition out, that there is a plan for them to be able to successfully navigate that. And I think that's all beautiful. Now, Debbie, you mentioned briefly your own story and how you kept that private, but you also mentioned that you were invited to the banquet back in 2001. What were you doing before? And I guess, you said obviously what drew you to it was your own story and then kind of being brought into it. But I don't know. I guess like there. How was that discernment for you? I imagine you had a career before, you were doing something else, and to give that up, to say I'm going to start working in a nonprofit. It's like, I imagine the pay probably wasn't that good. Usually nonprofits aren't as, and so like, how was that discernment for you personally? Just kind of saying, no, I think this is really what I feel God calling me to do, and just how was that process for you?
Yeah, thanks for asking. It was a very prayerful decision. So, I had gotten to know a lot of the staff at the organization. At that point, my husband and I were also co-chairs of Charlotte Right to Life,
Hmm.
so we knew a lot of people in the community.
Sure.
We were both passionate. My husband was not the father of the child that I lost through abortion, but once I told him, and once we both came back to our Catholic faith, he just 100% has supported, my desire to help women avoid that choice. And so once the opportunity was presented to me, you're right. I was working for a Fortune 100 company. I had a successful career ahead of me. My husband was a full-time dad.
Yeah.
We at the time, I guess we had 3.5 children. I was pregnant at the time, and and so it was a big, big decision. But God just kept planting those seeds, and my heart wanted to come and work
Hmm.
here,
Hmm.
but my brain was saying this is not the best decision on paper. and and I'll never forget, I there were 2 things. There was Father Benedict Groeschel. I was watching him on EWTN, and he looked straight into the camera and said, if you're given the opportunity to help a local pregnancy resource center or pregnancy organization, you should do it. That finger was pointing right at me. And
Like,
and
darn it, Catholic guilt gets me every time. Come on, Father Grishel.
and then the other part was, I remember praying about it, and I felt God kind of say to me, look, if I asked you to go be a missionary, on the other side of the globe, go to Africa or go to somewhere, some third world country, wouldn't you do that? And I
Hmm.
remember, feeling in my heart like, yes, Lord, of course I would go do that. And then this kind of response was, well, then why wouldn't you do it in your own backyard?
Oh my. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
And
Mm.
so I was like, wow, okay, Lord, I that's crystal clear, you know. And so yeah, so and it hasn't always been easy. We have 7 children
Mhm.
now,
Oh,
but
bless
it
you. That's
has
awesome.
but it's fruitful. It is so fruitful. And I get to, and it's funny, I've stayed in touch with some of my friends in corporate and they're super jealous. They're like, they would love to be, you know, following their passions and
Yeah.
working, you know, for more for their soul than for the paycheck.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you for sharing all of that. It is incredible when the Lord does call us, and love what you said is that it's not even like if God would have called you to Africa or do some missionary, you'd be like, yeah, I do it in a heartbeat. But then why not in your backyard? And sometimes we get caught up in thinking that it has to be this big thing. We have to go, and it's just like no, like the Lord calls us at the most local level, just to serve. Hey everybody, this is Dr. Mario Sacasa. I'm taking a quick break from my conversation with Debbie Capen to encourage you to check us out at faithandmarriage.org. At faithandmarriage.org, it's a wonderful website that has great resources to help you in your marriage or in your faith journey. If you want to sign up for one of our upcoming marriage retreats, head on over to the website. You want to listen to past episodes of this beautiful podcast, head on over to the website. If you want to look up Jason Angelette's At the Heart video series, head on over to the website. Or if you're interested in purchasing United in Love or Dating Well, guess what? We got it all available for you at faithandmarriage.org. Also, you can see where I'm speaking or where Jason's speaking, upcoming events that we have. All of it's listed on our website, so please come on over, check us out at faithandmarriage.org. We're here to provide these resources to help you in your faith or in your marriage or relationship walk. I appreciate everything you've been sharing. How, if you don't mind sharing just a little bit more about your own journey. I mean, and you mentioned that you were a college student also, when you found yourself in a situation of unplanned pregnancy, and then years later came back to your faith. How was that process for you? Clearly, it seemed like this process of healing obviously has been very impactful in your life now that you've dedicated your life to helping other women avoid circumstances that you were in.
Mhm.
And what was that journey like for you?
Yeah, like a lot of people that I knew, I was raised Catholic, but it was, you know, going to church on Sunday and saying grace before meals. But that was really, you know, that was about it, you know. And my faith was important to me, but I didn't know enough to defend it really. And you know, by the time I went off to college, you know, life was pretty tough. My father had passed away unexpectedly when I was 13.
Hmm.
And so my mom had worked hard to make sure that I could go to college. And so I get there and, you know, sadly, like a lot of people, I was enjoying, you know, the extracurricular life, probably more than the classes.
Mhm.
So I was going out and partying
Yes,
and making
I
friends.
joke with my kids, and I'm sorry to interrupt you. I always tell my kids
Yeah.
that college classes was part of my collegiate experience. You know, that's
Yes, exactly. So, so then, you know, I would only attend mass when I was going home. You
Mm,
know, I never once attended mass when I was at school, away from home, and sadly, just really got drawn into that whole, you know, feminism, you know, ideals that have taken over a lot of college campuses
excuse me.
now. And so, the summer before my sophomore year, 2 weeks before I went back to school, I found out that I was pregnant. And the father was a boyfriend that, you know, I had been seeing over the summer, and he was getting ready to actually move out of the country. And I was going back to school. And, you know, I always share this because I think it's so important, for everybody to understand. Like when I told him that I was pregnant, you know, he looked at me and he said, "Oh, what are you going to do?"
Mm,
And I think that in this culture of my body, my choice, you know, this is a woman's issue. The flip side of that is that men get a free pass,
mm,
right?
mhm.
It's okay. What, you know, it's you. I don't have to support this child because you can have an abortion,
Hmm.
And so with that, I really felt alone, and I went back to school and went to the health center at my college and asked for a pregnancy test. And they would not even take me back into a room. They said, look, if you're pregnant with a take home test, then you don't need us. You're pregnant.
Hmm.
And I just stood there. And I was actually only 18 at the time. I was kind of a young college student. And I remember thinking, wow, the adults in my life are not really interested in helping.
Wow.
And they just said, you could look up abortion in the yellow pages. And that always tells my age a bit. But um, so that's sadly what I did is I looked up abortion in the yellow pages, made an appointment. And um, I have to say that for a while I was kind of maybe even the poster child for Planned Parenthood. Like it seemed like everything was great. I had finished my college degree. I got a job. I was seeing, my now husband. But in my soul, at this point, in my early 20s, I knew something wasn't right,
Hmm.
and I missed God. I missed Him, and but I felt like I had committed the unforgivable sin. I felt like there was no way that He could take me back. Um, and it's through divine mercy, through the sacrament of reconciliation, um, our merciful Lord welcomed me back. And once I started going to church again and went through Rachel's Vineyard, it really is a process. And I've heard that from other women too, that it's a constant process of of diving into God's divine mercy, and just keep swimming.
Hmm. Hmm.
And
Hmm.
and so at that point, my husband had not really come back to the faith yet, and I started praying the rosary for him. I remember like I pulled out the same little rosary that I got when I made my first communion that I had kept,
Wow.
and I could barely remember how to pray it. I knew that I knew some of the beads were Our Fathers and some were Hail Marys, and I just started muddling along. And God, is so wonderful, and our Blessed Mother is so wonderful that he came back to the church too, and going through all that, experiencing it firsthand, and grieving my child. I have so
Hmm.
much empathy now for women and fathers who have experienced abortion, and there's a bunch of us out there.
Hmm.
They're in the pews, they're
Hmm.
they're they're everywhere,
Hmm.
and they need that message too, that they can come back, to the faith.
Yeah. That there isn't a sin that is unforgivable, that the Lord is ready to receive us,
Mhm.
and that He's always ready to be present with us. And I think that message is so powerful. I mean, for all of us in our life, of course, to recognize that without God's mercy, we are nothing. But recognizing, even as you stated in your circumstance, that it was acknowledging that, recognizing that you missed God, and slowly trying to take the steps back to Him. That, like the prodigal son, he comes and meets you all, not even halfway. You just turn, and he's coming right there to be there with you. And so then, even in that process of you not just come back to your faith, but then opening up the grieving process as well, and to genuinely not just dismiss it, or be um, what's the word? Dismissive of what happened, but to genuinely being able to grieve that, which is all part of healing. It's all part of the process for us, that we can't just whitewash, our experiences. We have to be able to dive into them, to walk through them, and to continue to move forward as we do in life. And one of the things that I've been struck by is, as you keep talking about Catholics putting their money where their mouth is, or even now your journey of mercy is, where why have we lost this as the narrative? Why isn't this the narrative? Is it simply that Planned Parenthood and folks on that side have strongly kind of convinced, that, and I think it is, and I kind of know the answer here, but I know we've come into this space that we've convinced ourselves that freedom is the greatest good here, and that everything falls in accordance with that. And so autonomy of a woman's body, which certainly is important, but even at the expense of being able to have the freedom to end a pregnancy. And we would say, well, freedom, of course, is important, but there's still limits with that the greater good, of course, is charity and is love. And it's love where everything else has to fall underneath. And somehow we've lost that. And so now we're always viewed as like the bad guys in this conversation, when all we're trying to do is communicate kind of mercy and now resources like what you guys talk, what you're doing in terms of genuinely being able to provide it. That's not just talk, but you're walking the walk. Why isn't that the larger narrative for pro-lifers as a whole? And where do you think that we've lost that narrative in the pro-life movement as a whole?
Yeah, I think that young people today have really been brainwashed. They really have. I mean, that this it's all about me, me, me. We have lost as a society, I feel, the beauty of sacrificial love, and that it's not a burden. It's you actually get more than you give when you're in a relationship like motherhood. I think part of it too is the breakdown of the family. I think that families are now such a source of pain for people that through either divorce or abuse or other things, that we've lost that ideal that people would want to strive to have a family. I feel like that's been lost. And I think too, in the pro-life movement, when I first came into it, I was shocked at the number of post-abortive women that were in the movement. And, it's these people that have been there, done that. Now we're going to come back and try to fix it. And I think that's another important step that needs to happen in the church, is really trying to reach out and find these women, because they're not going to raise their hands necessarily because of the shame, because of the pain. And I know even for me, just for my own children to find out, that was a big thing. Like, I didn't want to hurt my children. And so finding ways to reach these women that have had abortions, I think, is key, because there's this narrative out there too that women are going to be arrested, and that there's this criminalization of it, which it is a crime. Murder is a crime, but it's so much more than that, when we need to help women to understand that they can come back to the faith. I feel like that's a huge part of it. I really do, because I've known so many women that have gone through this, and they're out there and they're silent, and we need to minister to them and bring them on board to be the rally cry. Right now, Planned Parenthood has this initiative of Shout My Abortion, where they're trying to get women who have had abortions to be proud and to shout it. But then there's organizations like Silent No More Awareness that are the other side. And I feel like there's this struggle right now between the two of who gets to be right, the women who regret it or the women who are proud of it. And we're missing the greater point that, we have to be examples of love. And, the other side of that too is just within our own families. I'm still struck at the number of pro-life families that when they experience an unplanned pregnancy in their own homes, how much they struggle with that, and that the daughters feel like they have nowhere to go. And so I just think it's these conversations like we're having right now that people need to start having more of these conversations at home, completely infused with love, and to take all the anger and the rhetoric out of it, and to understand that it all comes down to basically those human relationships, and that we've all got each other's back.
Amen to that. Agreed. So the encouragement that you laid out for women who have had abortions to be a little bit more open, I mean, that's a courageous act. And I think that certainly is individual. For every person has to make that decision for themselves. Again, you've spoken about yourself. When you first got asked by MiraVia, but back then Room at the End, for your story to be on that next year's fundraiser, I'm like you hinted at it a little bit, but what would you say to somebody who's listening to this and maybe has had an abortion but has never told anybody, or is a man who's encouraged a woman to have one and never talked about it? What would you say to them about the benefits of being a little bit more public with their story?
Yeah. And again, I go back to it is a trauma. So
Yes.
it's, I think that healing needs to happen. And every person's decision on when to come public it has to be discerned through
Hmm.
prayer.
Hmm.
And I just knew that God was calling me then, that's when God was calling me.
Yeah.
And my biggest concerns, God has met with so much mercy. Like it was telling my mother, and he got me through that. It was, my children finding out, and he's been getting me through that. I'll never forget. I have to share this story. It's just such a wonderful example of God's mercy. My children knew that they had an older brother named Stephen, but they didn't know that
Mm.
I had aborted him. They just knew that he existed. And my oldest daughter, we were at church at Mass. It was Divine Mercy Sunday. I had taken her outside with one of the babies because one of our babies was being loud and disruptive. So we're outside, and we're listening to the Mass on the speakers outside. And it was at the moment of the consecration, and the bells were ringing on Divine Mercy Sunday. And she turned to me, and she was probably about maybe 12 or 13 at the time. She goes, "Mom, did you abort Stephen?"
Oh my.
And I looked at her and I said, "Yes, honey, I did. And I'm so sorry. And I really want to talk to you about this after Mass."
Mm.
And so on the way to the car, in just her very childlike way, she just looked up at me and she said, "Well, gosh, Mom, if God can forgive you, so can I."
Oh.
And, that to me was God laying it out there perfectly on the moment of on Divine Mercy Sunday, that he's going to take care of everything.
Mm. Mm. Thanks, Debbie, for sharing that. That's really touching and beautiful. And I think what I appreciate about your story and your involvement in your work and all of this is that this isn't as neat and clean as I think we want it to be. And you stated that earlier, which is like, if we can get past the rhetoric, let's get past the camps, let's get past whatever the talking points are, and get back to like relationships and people. If we can listen to people's stories and understand the nuance and the complexities that are there, we can see that we're trying. And if we can provide services that meet people in those spaces, then that's ultimately what's going to be helpful. And if people are a little bit more open to receiving, first and foremost, God's mercy upon their experience, then that's going to transform them. If they want to then share that, certainly to be able to help others, then praise God for that also. And I think all of this is really beautiful. So I genuinely appreciate everything that you're sharing.
Oh, thank you. And I love to say every time one of our moms is on campus, she's evangelizing, just that baby bump of her walking around on campus. And I think when people see it, they get it. And so I really feel like the more that people can see that women with an unplanned pregnancy can, can take the next good step, right?
Mm-hmm.
And turn, something scary into something good. And
Mm-hmm.
yes, it might not be the way that, that God's perfect will, but
Sure, sure, sure. Right.
God allows these things. And these brave women that are going out there, they're changing the culture on their college campuses. And that's our prayers, that one campus at a time, one woman at a time, that we can impact the culture.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think when you said this earlier about like a crisis pregnancy, talking about pregnancy as a whole, obviously is incredibly demanding. Like, and there's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. And I think that's the narrative is when you say with abortion, well, it's just easier just to terminate the pregnancy and get rid of all those variables. But we do live in a society where we do have affluence and we do have intelligence and systems that we can provide resources to be able to help women navigate that, where there is a place where we can. People talk about eradicating poverty and stuff. I'm like, yeah, we can do that, but the reason we don't is because of systems and greed and other things that kind of prevent us from being able to do that. Similar here, where it's like, is it ideal? No, of course. But can we provide resources to help women, even if they don't have those resources within their circumstances? I think we can. And I think the more that we can try to pivot and move in that direction, I think the better things will be. Now, I do want to ask, just here we are, 2023. We're a year removed from the leak of the Dobbs decision. When Roe versus Wade was overturned, and I've had great conversations with other pro-life advocates about this. But in the work that you do, how has that operating in a post-Roe world, has that had any impact one way or the other? Yeah, that's my question.
It's interesting. First of all, I have to say, when it was overturned, it was such a shock, right? I mean, we prayed for it, we worked for it for so long, and then when it happens, like, wow, is this real?
It really happened. Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
And I remember I was driving to the office, and when it was officially announced, and my first phone call was to a restoration company that we've used in the past for, when we've had like storm damage, but I wanted to get them on the line to be prepared because, all of these pregnancy resource centers were being attacked. And how sad that was what we immediately had to do, is start putting safety plans in place in case we were going to be targeted. And I think that was the first, wake up call, because we got the call from our local police department that they had received alerts that we might be targeted. So here we are, just trying to serve moms and babies, and I'm having to worry about, the security of our clients, our staff, our volunteers. And like I said, that was really the first sign that something had changed, right? And then the beautiful part is that we got so many phone calls of support, and people, once the Dobbs decision came out, it really motivated people to want to help. And we got calls from people who had never heard of us before. They just started Googling, looking for organizations. And, we made a lot of new friends. So I'd say that was the second thing that changed. But, abortion is still legal in North Carolina, and it's not legal next door in South Carolina. So we've become even more of a destination. So we have seen an influx of calls. We're now reaching out even more so to pregnancy resource centers in South Carolina and building those relationships. Because North Carolina, unfortunately, I don't see it changing anytime soon. And we have to continue to let people know that we're here for that, for the life option.
Yeah, absolutely. And you're right. I mean, it is sad that was the first thing you had to do. Did you guys get vandalized at all? Just ask.
No, we had a few, phone calls from people that weren't very nice. We were alerted that there were going to be protesters at our banquet. So we had to beef up security there, and that all went fine. So, God looks after us, so we were very blessed in that respect. But it's just, I have to now keep that hat on all the time, of thinking that way, that, there might be people out there that want to do our work harm.
Yeah, which is the irony, right? I mean, in terms of, I thought they're the side for tolerance and equality, and choice.
I know.
So that's the thing, you only hear about the stories of like and it's not right when it ever happens in terms of vandalizing of an abortion clinic or things of that nature. But the national media never picks up when it's the opposite, and it happened all over the country, the vandalism of pregnancy resource centers. Yeah, I think that what it is, the reversal of Roe v. Wade, what it did is it really it puts it back into our hands. And I think that's the piece that for me has been kind of remarkable. I mean, I really never thought it would ever happen. I'm just gonna be honest. I'm not trying to be pessimistic, but I just really never thought it would happen. And so the fact that it did happen, Louisiana is a very pro-life state and had a trigger law ready to go. They passed it before, and so as soon as the decision came down and Roe was overturned, abortion was immediately legal, in the state of Louisiana, and that's great. That's credit to the work of Ben Clapper, who I've had on the show to talk about what they do with Louisiana Right to Life, and that's because Louisiana leans pretty red, and they're able to do that. A state like North Carolina is a battleground state for many reasons, and so you have a strong conservative bent, but you also have a strong liberal bent in the state also. And so this is a state like this, it's going to be more difficult to pass laws that will be as wide reaching as it was in Louisiana. And then you're seeing that in other states. Minnesota just passed a law that, to my understanding, is some of the most aggressive, abortion basically until the baby's born. And then Wisconsin, passed some restrictions or criminalizing individuals who want to prescribe abortive pills. And so I'm like, man, where do we go from here? Where does where we're just continuing this polarization, and all coming from, again, this misunderstanding of what all this really means. And so I would love for our state of North Carolina to be able to move in a direction where it does become pro-life, and that would be phenomenal. I know my wife has already reached out to our local representatives and gotten some less. I wouldn't say they weren't not charitable, but they were pretty blunt response that, no, never voting for that. Anything that restricts a woman's freedom. And it's just like there's not even conversation anymore. It's just use that word rhetoric, and that's the right word. It's just talking points. And just repeating talking points, as opposed to trying to get to a point where we can actually have conversation again about this. And I think that's what, when you talk about the next steps of the pro-life movement, I think the work that you guys do really kind of changes the conversation. It's like, no, like, how about we talk about these women that are in need, and let's talk about what genuinely is going to be helpful for them. With the work that you guys have been doing since 1994, how many women have you served total, ballpark?
Oh, let's see. Overall,
Yeah.
we are, over, I believe it was 40,000 women through both programs.
It's incredible.
Yeah. So,
has anybody ever regretted going to MiraVia?
I know, right? No, in fact, the sweetest thing, a few months ago, a woman knocked on the door at where the outreach center was, at the old home, and she had brought her grown son, and she said, I wanted my son to see where I brought him home to. And that to me is the ultimate compliment, right? Like, that you've got a guy now in his mid-20s, who was being brought back, and this mom, all these years later, still wanted to come back and say thank you. And that's the future, is just continuing to change it generationally.
Yeah, that's it. And giving that next generation a chance to emerge, and not just saying that, well, just because it's unplanned, that life isn't as valued as lives that come from circumstances that are planned, or just because you don't have those resources. And again, I'm not trying to make light of it. I recognize that there are women who find themselves in circumstances where they don't have the right resources, and I understand that, and we just want to be able to say that resources are available. We just have to do a better job kind of communicating them and broadcasting them.
Yeah. And I feel I should mention too that, some of our moms do choose adoption. So they make an adoption plan for their child, and we fully support them in that as well. And so, yeah, there's always a way forward.
There is. We live in a day and age where we can do just about anything that we set our minds to. And so there is a way forward here for most people as well. And again, not making light of the circumstances women find themselves in, but just trying to continue to say, we have to do better, putting resources in the communities where the resources are needed. And we have to do a better job communicating and changing the narrative of what the pro-life movement is, and making sure that people know that we're here to support. And that's primarily the main focus, not just forcing people, like to taking control of their bodies or whatever else that we see. I mean, honestly, I think just a couple of days ago I saw, and this type of stuff really bothers me when it gets really abrasive. I saw like a bumper sticker, and it was a female reproductive system. So it was the fallopian tubes and the uterus kind of outline, but then one of the fallopian tubes kind of went back around, and it was a middle finger. And I was like,
how sad.
How sad. Like, what does that communicate? I know what you're trying to say, which is, get your effing hands off my body type of thing. But I was like, is that charity? What does that communicate?
Yeah. No, and on both sides too. I remember the very first thing I did after my Rachel's Vineyard retreat is I had some kind of snarky pro-life bumper stickers at the time. Yeah. and I replace those with more loving pro-life stickers because yeah, I mean it is about it. It's easy to fall and to let anger drive us
Mm.
as opposed to true love and charity.
Amen. So we can't be snarky. We have to. Yeah.
I love a good snarky bumper sticker, but I took mine off.
Good for you, Debbie. Good for you. Well, Debbie, I've enjoyed our conversation. If people are interested in learning more about the work that you do at MiraVia, how can they do so?
Yeah, we'd love for them to come visit at miravia.org. So it's miravia.org. And then they can find us on social media at MiraVia Life. And we're even on TikTok now. We finally.
Oh, awesome. Are you dancing?
Finally,
Are you breaking the dance
never,
moves?
never. We're trying to, attract people, not repulse them.
All right. Well, we'll have links to all of those in the show notes. And Debbie, final question to ask all my first-time guests: what gives you hope?
What gives me hope? The fact that every new day that God gives us, every morning that I wake up, I'm like, okay, God has not given up on us, and so every new day, every new breath that we have, to me, is a sign that God is still there and He wants us. He's not rejected us, so that gives me hope.
He does want us. He willed us into existence, and even if the origins or the circumstances of our conception was not ideal or was not planned, God certainly willed us all into existence, and
Yes.
He wants us. And so it's a beautiful,
Exactly.
beautiful message, and that means that all of our lives have meaning, have purpose, have intentionality. We're not just here by accident. And so it is a beautiful message to wrap up our show with. So Debbie, thank you so much for being present with us today, and many blessings to you and the good work that you guys are doing.
Oh, and to you too. Thank you so much.
All right, everybody, that does it for my conversation with Debbie. And here in the outro, just want to offer a couple edits. The first is that Debbie had sent me an email afterwards and just wanted to clarify to the audience that the number of clients that MiraVia has served over the years is not 40,000, as she indicated in the interview, but rather it's 10,000. And so we wanted to make sure that we get the proper numbers out there to the public. So that's the first. The second piece is that we had recorded this interview back in March. And here we are in May of 2023, and a lot has happened over the last couple months regarding state legislatures, specifically North Carolina and South Carolina, trying to pass abortion bans and how this is being wrestled in the state legislature or with the governors. And so we know that things are still in flux with regards to the news. So any of the stuff that we had stated in the episode may not be relevant when you listen to this show. But it's important for us to be aware that these battles are happening at the state level. And so we want to encourage everybody to contact their state legislatures, to contact their governors, to see what bills are available, what's happening in their local governments, and that this is where we're moving forward. If you want to listen to a previous episode on best ways to do this, and check it out, my episode with Ben Clapper from last year when the leak happened, we talk about best ways of moving forward and recognizing that now that Roe v. Wade is gone, the question of abortion is at the state level, no longer at the federal level. And so we have to do our work. And so that's why shows like this are so important, so that we can change the narrative, change the message, and recognize that the pro-life movement is primarily aimed at helping women and giving them opportunities to avoid crisis situations, and that we have wonderful services like what Debbie is providing to help college women specifically to be able to still be taken care of, to have a home where they can continue their studies, and to help them have the baby as well as advancing their career, and not seeing career or family life as a competitive battle or as something that is a zero-sum game, but there is a way forward here. And so thank you all for listening to this episode. Many blessings to you, and we'll just continue to producing great episodes for you. So God bless you all.